Hey everyone, welcome to the Progressive Social Warriors. Okay, so we're going to be talking about MSNBC's Joy Reid. Joy Reid thinks she could come out nowadays and smear Bernie Sanders, smear Bernie Sanders supporters, and smear the progressive movement. Well, she has another thing coming because we have a movement now. It's called the Progressive Movement, and that's why I love this movement so much, because we have so many different channels who come out and do a story, and just like the corporate media who comes out and unites behind certain stories and tries to put their message out there, we can do the same thing. And that's what we do. And it's great that now corporate establishment shills like Joy Reid can be exposed. That's what we're going to do here right now, because she's pissing me off and what she's doing lately, and not lately, for a while now. And so we're going to get into this video and let her have a piece of my mind right here, right now. Just real quick, I take a lot of these clips sometimes from progressive channels, so I just want to shout them out real quick. I got a clip from Rational National. I got it from Humanist Report and TYT Politics, which I'm sure most of you know already. But yeah, I just, even though those channels are bigger than me, hey man, I'm here to have this movement all be inclusive, and it's not about me or how big my channel can be. It's all about us coming together and fighting the corporate establishment. So let's get into Miss Joy Reid and what she has to say about Bernie Sanders supporters, and the progressive movement in general.
Nancy Pelosi actually manages to win elections, right? People down her and sort of tie her as sort of what's wrong with the party.
Wait.
She became.
We've been devastated in the House. We have the smallest caucus since Reconstruction.
I'm going to try not to stop this. I know you people hate when I stop the video. Joy Reid is using Nancy Pelosi as an example of Democrats winning. Joy Reid, the Democratic Party is almost non-existent. It almost ceases to exist. This lady doesn't have a clue. I don't know. Sometimes you see these people on corporate media, on regular television, and you think, well, they must be smart. They must know what they're talking about. How did they get that job? And then you realize, nah, they might be smart, but they have no idea what they're talking about, because they live in their own little bubble and don't have a clue of what's happening. Nancy Pelosi, what a joke. Okay, now watch what Joy Reid's about to do. She's about to frame this to tell people that Bernie Sanders only appeals to the white vote, and the African American and Latino vote is separate from Bernie Sanders. This lady is such a joker, man. Oh my God, she's pissing me right off with the shit that she's doing. So let's see if Joy Reid has any clue of what she's talking about.
And, Crystal, I want to bring you into this, because the Democratic Party really, since the election, has been doing this dance where they seem to be sort of chasing the Bernie Sanders supporters around the country. Tom Perez did this big tour where he went around and trying to figure out what went wrong on the side of white voters, not looking at that pretty demonstrable drop in black voter turnout that may have had something to do with voter suppression. It may have had something to do with messaging.
An economic vision for the future.
But real quick, Crystal, because we are tight on time, but I want to ask you about that, because in Montana, we just ran sort of a petri dish perfect experiment for what you're talking about, right? This was not an election where there were any black people in play. There were some Native Americans, but their votes were pretty suppressed around Montana. This was a white election of white voters, Republicans versus Democrats. Bernie Sanders went in there, supported Quist, the Democrat, that he ran on Bernie's platform. He ran the experiment that you're talking about, all about economics, all about economic issues. There was no racial issue or, identity politics. Democrats couldn't win there. So why is that theory viable?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Joy Reid? You're trying to say that the Democratic Party is using Bernie Sanders to get to the white vote? You are such a joke of an anchor. So we're gonna see now Miss Joy Reid's claim that Bernie Sanders only appeals to the white working class, and the Democratic Party is using him to get to the white working class because the African American and Latino vote doesn't seem to apply to Bernie Sanders. That's her thinking, right? Okay, so let's see.
If it can't work in Montana.
This is from a Harvard.
Okay, so this is from a Harvard poll. Let's see. African Americans, 73%. Hispanics, 68%. White, 52%. The lowest on the poll. So Miss Joy Reid, who has the resources of MSNBC, who knows that what she's saying is not true, is still trying to portray that Bernie Sanders only appeals to the white working class. Wow, man. I don't know how people like her and in the establishment media aren't embarrassed of themselves and what they do. They can literally go to sleep at night knowing that they talk pure shit and they know what they're saying is wrong, and yet they'll still do it just so that they can prop up the corporate establishment. And 80% of Democrats in general all favor Bernie Sanders.
Harris survey poll this year.
Because it does seem, I mean, they cannot count on, Bernie Sanders isn't even a member of the party. They do need some sort of a leader, someone to rally around. You still have a lot of division between the Sanders and Clinton factions in the party. Because one of the arguments, Vox has a great article about it, there are a lot of people who are making the argument that one reason to choose you is that Bernie Sanders supporters would feel that they had gotten something in the bargain, that they'd gotten somebody who was a Sanders supporter early, who then did support Hillary Clinton, but at least that you'd represent that point of view.
Sure.
Is that an important thing to do, or what do you make of the argument by a lot of Clinton supporters who say, wait, Bernie Sanders supporters aren't Democrats. We need to take care of Democrats first.
Okay, so first, Bernie Sanders isn't a Democrat. Okay. Then Bernie Sanders supporters aren't Democrats. Even though we just saw the poll that says 80% of Democrats support Bernie Sanders. Man, it's so frustrating to see people like Joy Reid on national TV spewing bullshit. I get so frustrated with these people, man. Thank God for this movement. Thank God for all of us coming together and exposing these people, because they need to be exposed. Bernie Sanders isn't even a Democrat, and the Bernie supporters aren't even Democrats. Joy Reid, you don't have a clue of what you're doing out there. And wake up and smell the coffee.
She pushed me aside.
And despite that laughter, he then, Michael Tracy, went on Twitter and claimed that you shoved him. Your response?
Well, if you take a look at the video, you can see that that's not true. You know, the right wing have all of these people harassing me, following me around, trying to intimidate me.
He did not.
Okay, and so there, I'm not talking about what happened there. That was just the thing that happened with one of the TYT members. They had a little confrontation with the woman on the left. But Joy Reid knows that TYT is not a right-wing organization, but yet she doesn't correct her. Why is that? Maybe it's because Joy Reid wants the narrative to be TYT is a right-wing news organization. Again, a journalist with all the resources, just letting it out there. Yeah, TYT is a right-wing organization. We'll just leave it out there, and we won't correct it, even though we know better. This is about the shooting that just happened, where one of the Republicans just got shot by someone who was a Bernie supporter. And anyways, let's just watch the clip real quick. See what Jordan has to say about it.
For Bernie Sanders campaign, he does not work for Bernie Sanders Senate. He has no formal or legal or financial connection to Bernie Sanders. So of course, Joy Reid blames Bernie Sanders for a mass shooting. Of course, because when Joy Reid slimes and smears Bernie Sanders for something that is not his fault, has no connection whatsoever to Bernie Sanders, her corporate colleagues aren't going to call her out. So it's up to us to call her out, because she's a liar, she's being deceptive, and she's a fraud. So let me read you the tweet. So somebody tweeted, too soon to mention Bernie owes his entire political career to the NRA, particularly his support of assault rifles his our opponent decried. So that was somebody else who tweeted that, and Joy Reid responded to that person. I hope we have the maturity as a country to confront facts like this. At the same time, we're thinking of the victims and keeping level heads.
Can you believe this lady? She's using a tragedy to smear Bernie Sanders and trying to make it seem like his gun record, which by the way is a D-, contributed to of these people. Man, I don't know how she sleeps at night doing shit like this. She is an absolute joke. First of all, Bernie Sanders comes from a state with very minimal gun violence, and it's a state that has high hunting. The people in that state are quite avid hunters. You know, his support is kind of represents his state. You know, they have very minimal crime, and so the one policy that he kind of, I guess, disagrees with is that blaming gun manufacturers, and not even really blaming gun manufacturers. He doesn't want to blame the mom and pop shops who sell guns and might sell it to a crazy person and then do a mass shooting and then blame the mom and pop shop for that. Joy Reid doesn't go around blaming Barack Obama when mass shootings were happening all over the place during his administration, and he didn't do anything to regulate gun legislation because, like the Democrats are, they want to pander to both sides. They don't want the gun legislation because they don't want to piss off the NRA, because that's the type of people they are. And her trying to smear Bernie Sanders and smear the progressive movement and smear Bernie Sanders supporters is absolutely horrible. And yeah, so I had to make this and call her out, because that's what the progressive movement does, and that's what the progressive movement is doing. We're calling out those who need to be called out, because if we don't do it, no one else is. The corporate establishment ain't gonna call each other out, so that's what we're here for. Anyways, guys, if you can support a small YouTube channel who's trying to get his message out there, and you've gotten to this point of the video, I'd really appreciate you guys subscribing and maybe hitting that bell notification. And if you ever come across a video of mine that you might think is interesting, you can watch it. I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about Joy Reid and her brilliant interpretation of Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders supporters and the progressive movement. Anyways, thanks everyone.